In a small village where people kept many secrets, one woman's deadly plan would bring great trouble to her family. What began as a bitter idea would end with a truth no one was ready to face. Long ago, in a small village between hills and a big river, there lived a woman named Aya. She was known for her beauty, but inside her heart was growing hard. Aya had been married to Kofi for 12 years. When they first married, their home was full of laughter and dreams of children. But no children came, and with each passing year, Kofi became less kind to Aya. A woman who cannot have children is like a tree that gives no fruit, Kofi would say when he drank too much palm wine. What use is such a tree except for firewood? These words hurt Aya deeply, and slowly her love for her husband died, replaced by hatred growing in her heart. Aya lived with her husband, her mother-in-law Adwa, and her own mother Efua, who had come to live with them after Aya's father died. Adwa was cold to Aya and often took her son's side in fights. But Efua was Aya's comfort, always reminding her daughter that she had worth beyond having children. A woman's value is not only in the children she has, Efua would say, but in her wisdom and kindness to others. But Kofi did not listen. Instead, he began spending his evenings with a young woman from the next village. People whispered that Kofi was planning to take another wife, one who might give him children. One evening, as I ground grain for the evening meal, her tears falling into the flour, her mother sat beside her. "My daughter, you have been crying for too many days," Efua said, placing her hand on Aya's shoulder. "What troubles you so much?" Aya could not hold back her words any longer. "Kofi plans to marry again. He thinks I am worthless because I have no children. He shames me before the whole village." Efua listened with a serious face. "And what do you wish to do?" Aya's hands stopped moving. "Sometimes," she whispered, "sometimes I wish he would just go away." Efua's eyes grew wide, but before she could speak, Aya continued, "The old woman who lives at the edge of the forest knows plants that can bring sleep, healing, and other things. I have thought of going to see her." "Aya," Efua gasped. "Such thoughts are dangerous, like playing with a snake. Once you pick it up, you cannot control where it bites." But the seed of revenge had already taken root in Aya's heart, and her mother's warnings did not reach her. The next day, Aya went to the edge of the forest where the old medicine woman lived. The woman's hut stood apart from the village, surrounded by gardens of plants both good and bad. "I have been waiting for you, Aya," the old woman said as Aya came near. Her voice was like dry leaves in the wind. "Only those with heavy hearts come to my home when the sun is high." Aya was surprised. "You know my name?" "I know many things," the old woman replied. "I know the pain that has been growing in your heart. I know the tears you have cried at night. And I know why you have come today." Aya fell to her knees. "Then you will help me." The old woman's cloudy eyes seemed to look through Aya. "I can give you what you want, but remember, every action brings results, like ripples in a pond that cannot be stopped once the stone is thrown." From a small bag in her clothes, the old woman took out some dark, dried leaves. These leaves come from a plant that grows only in death's shadow. When cooked and added to food, they bring a sleep from which there is no waking. Aya's hand shook as she reached for the leaves. "Wait," the old woman warned. "Before you take this path, know this: death is not just an end but a beginning of results that may follow you through this life and into the next." For a moment, Aya hesitated, her mother's warnings echoing in her mind. But then memories of Kofi's cruel words made her reach out. "I understand," she said, taking the leaves and wrapping them carefully in cloth. As she walked back to the village, clouds gathered overhead. By the time she reached home, rain was beginning to fall, as if the sky itself cried for what was to come. For 3 days, Aya kept the deadly leaves hidden under her sleeping mat. Each night, she would take them out, looking at them in the dim light, thinking of the peace that would come once Kofi was gone. And each morning, she would hide them again, not yet ready to carry out her plan. On the fourth day, news reached Aya that made her blood run cold. Kofi had indeed asked to marry a young girl. The wedding would happen with the next full moon, less than a week away. That night, Aya made her decision. Tomorrow would be the day. The next morning, Aya rose early and began her work. It was her turn to cook the evening meal. Tonight, she would make Kofi's favorite food, a rich stew of yams, oil, and fish, with hot peppers and spices. All day, Aya did her chores with strange calm, as if it were any normal day. But inside, her heart beat like a drum at a funeral. As the sun began to set, Aya started making the evening meal. She built a cooking fire in the center of the yard and set up her largest pot. Into the pot went oil, onions, and peppers, filling the air with a good smell. When Efua had moved away, Aya quickly took out the leaves. With shaking hands, she crushed them between two stones, making them into a fine powder. The powder was dark, almost black, with a slight bitter smell that would be hidden by the peppers in the stew. Aya split the stew into 4 parts. 3 went into a large shared bowl from which she, her mother, and her mother-in-law would eat together as was their custom. The 4th part, the largest and richest, as was right for the man of the house, went into Kofi's personal bowl, a wooden dish that had belonged to his father. Into this bowl, Aya sprinkled the powder, stirring it quickly into the hot stew until no trace remained. "What are you doing, Aya?" The voice nearly stopped Aya's heart. She turned around to find Adwa, her mother-in-law, standing at the entrance to the yard, eyes narrow with doubt. I am just making sure Kofi's portion has the best pieces of fish," Aya stammered. Adwa came closer, looking into the bowl. "You are suddenly very concerned with pleasing my son," she said. After weeks of serving him cold food and cold looks, Aya felt sweat on her forehead despite the cool evening air. "I simply wish to make peace between us," she said, the lie bitter on her tongue. As the last light of day faded from the sky, Kofi returned. Soon, the family was seated around the mat, Kofi in the place of honor, with Adwa to his right, and Aya and Efwa across from them. Before them, the food steamed. "The meal looks good tonight," Kofi said, the closest thing to praise Aya had received in many months. Aya lowered her eyes. "Thank you, husband." As was custom, they waited for Kofi to take the first bite before starting their own meal. Aya watched, her heart pounding so loudly she feared others might hear it, as Kofi reached for his bowl. But then something unexpected happened, something that would change the course of all their lives. "Mother," Kofi said, turning to Efua, "you mentioned that your joints have been hurting more than usual these past days." Efua nodded, rubbing her knuckles. "The rains bring the pain. It is the way of old bones." "Then tonight, you shall have my portion," Kofi declared, picking up his bowl and placing it before Efua. "The best cut of fish and the richest sauce will give you strength." Aya's blood turned to ice in her veins. "No," she cried out, her hand darting forward as if to grab the bowl away. 3 pairs of eyes turned to her in surprise. Aya stumbled, trying to recover. "There is no need, Kofi. I can prepare another portion just as good for mother." "Nonsense," Kofi said firmly. "The food is ready now, and mother is hungry. I will eat from the shared bowl tonight." Efua smiled warmly at her son-in-law. "You are kind, Kofi. Such goodness will surely be blessed by the ancestors." Aya sat frozen, unable to speak, unable to move, as her mother reached for the poison bowl, the bowl meant for Kofi, the bowl that now sat before the person Aya loved most in the world. "Mother, wait," Aya began desperately. But at that moment, a noise at the yard entrance interrupted them. It was Kwame, Kofi's friend, arriving with urgent news about a fire in the village grain store. All hands were needed to stop it from spreading. I must go, Kofi said, rising quickly. We will eat when I return. I will come with you, Adwa declared, also standing. These old hands can still carry water. As they hurried away, I saw her chance, perhaps her only chance, to undo what she had done. Mother, she said quickly to Efua, let me heat Kofi's portion again for you. It has cooled while we waited. Efua shook her head. No need, my daughter. I don't mind cool food, and my hunger doesn't want to wait. With those words, Efua dipped her fingers into the pounded yam, formed a small ball, and used it to scoop up a mouthful of the deadly stew. Mother, Eno! Aya cried, lunging forward and knocking the food from her mother's hand. Efua pulled back in shock, staring at her daughter as if she'd gone mad. Aya! What has gotten into you? Tears came to Aya's eyes as the full weight of what she had nearly done crashed down upon her. The food, she whispered, her voice breaking. The food is poisoned. Efua's eyes widened with disbelief, then narrowed with understanding. Oh, my daughter, she said, her voice barely audible. What have you done? Aya could not meet her mother's gaze. I wanted him gone, she confessed. The way he treated me, the shame, the other woman. I couldn't bear it anymore. Efua was silent for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was heavy with sadness but not anger. Life gives us many burdens to carry, my daughter. But how we carry them decides who we become. Efua reached out and took Aya's shaking hands in her own. Now, we must clean this up before they return, and you must decide what path you will take from this moment forward. Together, mother and daughter quickly got rid of the poisoned food, burying it deep in the ground beyond the yard where not even dogs would find it. They prepared fresh stew, walking in silence, each lost in her own thoughts. What will happen now? Aya finally asked. Should I tell Kofi? Efua thought about this carefully. The truth has power, my daughter, but it also has results. If Kofi learns what you planned, your life in this village will be over. He would have the right to send you away, or worse. Perhaps that is what I deserve, Aya said softly. Perhaps, Efua agreed. But think of this, the spirits have given you a second chance today. They arranged for Kofi to give me his food, and for the village fire to delay our meal. These are not accidents but messages from the ancestors. That night, Aya lay awake, the events of the day playing over and over in her mind. She had come so close to doing something that could never be forgiven. And worse, she had nearly killed the one person who had always loved her. But as she thought more deeply, Aya realized she had been given a rare gift, the chance to choose a different path. She would stay and face her life with new courage. Not out of fear or duty, but because running away would solve nothing. Days passed, then weeks. Kofi did indeed bring home a second wife, Abina, a girl of 16 with bright eyes and a quick smile. But to everyone's surprise, especially Aya's, this did not bring the sadness she had expected. Abina, young and unsure in her new role, looked to Aya for guidance in running the household. And Aya, choosing to be generous rather than bitter, taught the girl what she knew of cooking, cleaning, and taking care of the home. Why do you help her? Adwa asked one day as she watched Aya show Abina how to prepare Kofi's favorite yam dish. She has taken your place in my son's heart. Aya thought about this as she continued to slice the yams. She has taken nothing that was truly mine, she said at last. Kofi's heart had already turned away. And by helping her, I help myself. I remain the senior wife, respected for my knowledge and dignity. Adwa studied her daughter-in-law with new eyes. You have changed, Aya. Yes, Aya agreed simply. I have. The most unexpected change, however, came in Kofi himself. Kofi began to treat Aya with a respect that had been missing for many years. One evening, as Aya sat outside their yard watching the sunset, Kofi joined her. "Abina is going to have a child," he said after a long silence. I had thought as much, having noticed the girl's morning sickness. "I am glad for you both," she said, and found that she meant it. Kofi looked up at her, searching her face for signs of jealousy or hurt, but finding none. "You are not angry?" Aya shook her head. "The child is a blessing from the ancestors. Why would I be angry at a blessing?" Kofi was silent for several moments. "I have not been kind to you, Aya," he finally said, the words clearly difficult for him. "I blamed you for something neither of us could control. We have both made mistakes," Aya said carefully. If only he knew how great her mistake had been, how close she had come to ending his life. The knowledge was a burden she would carry alone, a reminder of the darkness she had walked through and survived. As the months passed and Abina's belly grew round with child, the household settled into a new rhythm. Aya found purpose in her role as senior wife and in the respect she had earned through her changed behavior. Though she had no children of her own, she discovered that there were many ways to nurture and create life beyond having babies. She began to spend time with the village healer, learning about plants that healed rather than harmed. Her knowledge grew, and soon women from the village began to ask for her advice for various sicknesses. In this work, Aya found satisfaction and a sense of worth that had nothing to do with her role as Kofi's wife. And what of the old medicine woman who had given Aya the deadly leaves? She disappeared from the edge of the forest not long after that fateful day, her hut found empty one morning as if she had never existed. Many years later, when Aya's hair had grown white and her hands showed the marks of a long life well lived, she sat surrounded by grandchildren, not born of her body but of her heart, the children of Abina and the other wives Kofi had eventually taken. "Tell us a story, Mother Aya," the children begged as evening fell on the village. Aya smiled, her eyes still bright despite her old age. "I will tell you a story about poison," she said, "and about the many forms it can take." And so she began, speaking of a young wife filled with bitterness, of deadly leaves and a meal that was never eaten, of ancestors who stepped in at the last moment to prevent a great sadness. She did not say the story was her own, that secret she had shared only with Ephia, who had carried it to her grave many years before. As the children listened, Aya told the tale not as a confession but as a teaching, a warning about the poison of hatred and the power of forgiveness. And so, she concluded as the first stars appeared in the evening sky, the woman who had once tried to end a life learned instead how to truly live. She discovered that the strongest person is not the one who can harm others, but the one who can remain whole and kind even when harmed. "But what happened to the husband?" one child asked. "Was he ever punished for his cruelty?" Aya thought about this question carefully. "Life itself brings its own justice," she said at last. "The man who valued only sons found himself surrounded by daughters in his old age, daughters who cared for him when he could no longer care for himself. And it was these daughters, not sons, who kept his name alive in the memories of the village after he joined the ancestors." The children nodded, happy with this ending. They did not notice the quiet tear that slipped down Aya's wrinkled cheek, nor did they understand the deep truth in her story, that the real poison had not been in the leaves, but in her heart, and that healing had come not from revenge but from the hard, beautiful work of choosing a better way.